Hello everyone, today's poem is Xiaoya, 深南山, a Xiaoya poem from the Book of Songs. If you have been through several poems in the Book of Songs, you would know how important the ancestors are for the Zhou people. And before the Zhou dynasty, the ancient Chinese worship the god, the heaven only. And since the Zhou dynasty, the ancestors of Zhou people are treated as almost identical to God, to heaven. So we can see so many poems has write about their ancestors, the ceremony to worship their ancestors. And this poem, 深南山, gave us a very detailed description on how the ceremony was about. So practically, when the Zhou people, they pray and make their sacrifice to the god, to the heaven, at the same time, at the same place, they pray and make their sacrifice to their ancestors as well. And in the poems in the Book of Songs, in most cases, they even don't mention they pray, they make their sacrifice to heaven, to God. Just keep in mind, the sacrifice, the prayer is always for both the God and their ancestors. And also keep in mind, the God is not the God in the Christians. The concept is quite similar. It's the super nature power. It's something beyond human that dominate the nature, dominate the world of human. The title 深南山 means the endless, the extending South Mountains. So the South Mountains is the most big and high mountains within the eyesight of Zhou people from their capital city. And it's also a symbolic, or it's sort of the equivalent things to heaven, or something most near to the heaven. So whenever you saw the term South Mountains in the Book of Songs, it always has a very strong implication or metaphor to God or to their ancestors. And I also have another argument of this explanation, because 信 in the ancient Chinese means stay somewhere for 2 nights. And very likely, and we can also explore this poem with this meaning, that stayed somewhere in the South Mountains for 2 nights. And this also could be well explained in this poem as well. Let's see. Okay, the first paragraph. 深比南山，惟与殿之 The endless South Mountain. It was our great ancestor Yu made it. 芸芸原习，曾孙田之 The flat, well-managed farming field. It's up and low, and it's their grandson was doing the farming work on it. 我将我里东南其亩 The boundaries of my place, I made it, I managed it, and I made the farming field, some to the south, some to the east. There is some concept we should discuss before we go to this paragraph. Yu is a great figure in the Chinese history thousands years before the Zhou dynasty, and the most greatest achievement by Yu is to manage to resolve the disaster of the Yellow River. So the Yellow River is just like the Nile River, flooding frequently, but its disaster is much worse than the Nile in Egypt, and it's the Yu resolve this disaster of Huanghe and the Yellow River, of course, and then people can live in this piece of land peacefully without the worry of the flooding by the Yellow River. By referring to Yu or Da Yu, the poet not only expressed their grateful to their ancestors, but they also claimed that the Zhou dynasty is the descendants from Yu, and their power, their rights are from a very decent heritage. And Yuanxi, this is a very frequent word in Book of Songs. The high-rise plateau is Yuan. Normally, it's a very, very good place to live, and it has its featured plants. And Xi is the lower land. Normally, is much white, and it has its featured plants and animals as well. So if you have been to this area, you will know it's very, very easily. Zhengsun means the son of grandson, the fourth generation. So here, very likely, the poet was expressing that he belongs to the dynasty of the fourth king, the fourth generations. And there's also another possibility that Zhengsun means the descendants of include and after the fourth generations. So if we explained with this meaning, it's hard for us to know which king or what time frame this poem was referring to. And 我江我里, jiang is the boundary of something. It could be the boundary of the farming field. It could be the boundary of a county, of a village. It could be a boundary of the mountains, because in this area, in the north, is North Mountains from west to east, and the South Mountains was also from the west to east, and in the middle is a basin with Yuan, Xi. Yuan is a high-rise plateau, and the Xi is the lower land, which is full of ponds and rivers. Here I have an argument as well. The character Li could be a loan word of Li, which means 25 families. So it's a small village, actually. Dongnan Qingmu describing the farming field. Some farming field goes to the direction of south. Some farming field goes to the direction of east. And Nanmu, the farming field, goes to the south, is more favorable because of its productivity. Just keep in mind, for today's people, our assets, let's see, your assets is on the stock market or in the bank. So the most important thing is the interest, how much interest yearly. So that's make a huge difference year after year. So for the Zhou people, their major assets, or most likely their only assets, is the farming field. If this piece of farming field of your family is more productivity, So that's equivalent to the monies in bank today for us. So the Nanmu, the farming field, goes to the south, has a much more interest compared to the east farming field. Okay, let's review the first paragraph. Again, it's quite important and beautiful. So this is the poet was standing on the South Mountains and looked down to the fertile plain, the fertile basin between the North Mountain and the South Mountain. Some farming field is high rise on the plateau. Some farming field is on the lower land with many ponds, with many rivers. And this is also the place the king, the fourth generation king, the fourth king, has managed his farming field as well. And Zheng Sun Tianzhi could also explained as the fourth king was hunting in this field. In the Book of Science, most places, the term tian means hunting. 我将我里, so just imagine you are standing on the high place in the South Mountains and look down. 我将, you see the boundaries of my boundaries. Could be the boundary of your farming field, could be the boundary of the village, could be the boundary of the capital city or many other small cities around the capital city. So that's the 我将,我里, my village. So there's a bunch of people with the king, and they all standing there locked down. Oh, this is my village. That is your village. 我将我里. So just imagine that's with so many beautiful scenes, and it's so self-sufficient. And then their focal point goes to the farming field, which is the base, which is the fundamental place their lives comes from, their assets come from. Okay, the second paragraph. 上天同云，雨雪纷纷. The sky above is full of clouds. The snow falls down heavily. 同云 means the sky are all same and covered the whole sky. So it's very thick clouds. 雨 here means something falling down from the sky. So the snow was falling down. 雨雪 means the snow falling down from the sky. 雨 should be read as the fourth tone. 雨 normally we read it as the first tone. The third tone. 雨. So here you should read it as 雨雪纷纷. 纷纷 is describing the snowflakes is all around and very heavily. 一之以麦木，既忧既卧. So 一 is add on, followed, add on. So the first sentence describing the heavy snow follows, and now followed and add on some of the very mild raining, and it make the raindrops very good enough, very plenty of. 忧 means plenty of, 既忧既卧, and 卧 means very wet. So it's very wetty by the mild rain and snows. So from here, actually, it's not one day something happened in one day. You cannot have the snow and mild rain at one day. So it's the different season. So the snow is in the winter and the mild rain is in the springs. Just keep in mind, the Zhou people are all farmers. So the snow and rain is only meaningful for them as far as it's good for their crops, for their farming field. So the most favorable rains or snows, the snow is always favorable, and the most favorable rains in the springtime. If the raining is in the summertime, especially during the harvest seasons, that's a very, very bad rain for them, and that will probably could destroy a lot of their harvest. The snow in winter and the rains in the spring could be also convinced in the third sentence, 既沾既足，生我白骨. As far as we have good enough snow and rain, finally we have a good harvest. 白骨 here is the general term for the crops, so all kinds of crops. So with the third sentence, we know very clearly this paragraph is telling us the weathers, the snows, the rains from the winter to the spring, and finally till they have a very good harvest. So it's not telling this day or that day that it's snowing, it's raining. It's a 6 to 8 months time frame. Let's review the first paragraph with the second paragraph together. The first paragraph, as we have analyzed, the king and a bunch of people, including the poet, they are standing on a high place somewhere in the South Mountain, and they look down to the fertile land. So it's the space, basically it's the space. In the north, it's the North Mountains, and it's the high-rise plateau, it's the lower land. I saw the boundaries, I saw the villages, and I saw the south farming field. I saw the east farming field. So this is about the space. And the second paragraph, it's about the time. So it reviews the past several months. We have very good snow, we have plenty of rain in the spring, and finally the God, the heaven, gave us a very, very good harvest. So it's you can feel how satisfied the Zhou people is and how grateful they were when they have a very good harvest, and when they look to their homeland, to the fertile place of the Zhou capital, surrounding the Zhou capital. Okay, the third paragraph. 疆场熠熠，黍稷郁郁. Our fertile land is just like the wings of bird. Our people is so busy with cutting our crops to harvest. 江, we have said, is sort of the boundary, or could be the farming field, could be the village. So here it refers to the land of the Zhou people. 场 is a very delicate term here. It refers to a flat field where the crops was processed and was made to the grain finally from the harvest crops. And 郁郁 normally was explained as very prosperous, which means the crops in the farming field are very prosperous. But by looking to the character 郁郁, apparently it means cutting something with many strokes. The three-tiled line means 3 strokes. Many strokes. 3 always mean many in the ancient Chinese. And this also explained the second sentence that it's a sequence, it's a time in this paragraph is in time sequence. First, they saw the farming field. Many people are cutting the crops, very busy, and they also saw the flat field, 场, where is the place to process the harvested crops to make it to grain and to make it into the powder. And the second pair of sentences came in time sequence. The harvested crops is all belong to the grandson, the fourth king, and they made the food, they cook the food, they make the wines from those harvested crops. 色 means the harvested crops. Okay, the third pair of sentence. 避我师宾受考万年. 避 means to give, to send something to someone. So all those, so let's continue from the second pair of sentence. So we made our food, we made our wines. So these foods, these wines, we gave to our guest. And 师 is the kids who pretend as the ancestors. So he will act as the ancestors in the ceremony. Normally they are the small kids. 寿考万年, long life for 10,000 years. The blessing of long life here is for the king of Zhou. Of course, it's also for the country, for the Zhou dynasty. From the third paragraph, the poet started to talk something about the huge ceremony, the sacrifice to their ancestors, but it's still at the preparation stage. They make their harvest, they cook the food, they prepare their wines, and they invite their guests. They let the kids to prepared to act as the ancestors in the ceremony. They treat their guests and treat the little kids with nice wine, with the nice food. And the last sentence tells us very clearly, everything is for the long life of the king, long life for the country. So this is the most important thing. This is the common interest for all the people in this big ceremony. The logic for Zhou people is quite simple. The offering, the sacrifice made to God, to their ancestors, is to please them, to please the heaven, to please their ancestors. And in return, the heaven and their ancestors would blessing the Zhou people, would give the fortune to Zhou people, and thus they would have a very wonderful year in the next year. Okay, the fourth paragraph. The grand ceremony is about to start. 中田有庐，疆场有瓜. In the farming field, there is small hut, small cottage, and in the farming field, either in the production field, there is mallow. So the hut is just like this. So you still can see this type of small hut made of grass and wood in the field in this area today. And normally this small hut is in the field of mallows to watch for the animals, or either from someone stealing the mallows. And jiang chang, we have explained. Jiang refers to the boundaries, and here it refers to the vast farming field. Chang is the place to process the harvested crops and fruits. And here the poet starting to talk about the mallows. Like this picture, it's a local brand. And today, the most popular mallows is water mallows, and these mallows. So from this poem, we can see the mallows is a very critical offering in the Zhou dynasty. Of course, it's just small mallows in this picture. Okay, the next sentence. 是烽是猪，献之皇祖. We cut the mallows and made it as the food for offering, and finally we offered these mallows to our ancestors. So here, the 猪 normally was interpreted as brew or ferment the food, but I have a quite different idea. So whenever you saw this component 祖, it always means something for the ancestors. Something happened in the ancestors' temples. So here it's very clearly tell us this is the food offering to the ancestors, and it's from the grass, from the radicals. We can see it's from the grass with a lot of the waters, and it's sweet. Huang means bright normally, so today it means emperor, but in the Zhou dynasty, Huang normally means big and bright, so which means 曾孙受考，受天之护. The grandson has a very long life, and he was with the blessing from the heaven. 曾孙, the son of grandson, so when I call it grandson in short, and it could be the fourth king in the Zhou dynasty. It could be another king much later, where most likely it's a king in the later period. And hu, the capital hu, means protect, blessing to someone. And in today's language, hu means the protection, the careness from the father. From the fourth paragraph, the grand ceremony is ongoing. First thing first, the mallow was prepared and offered to the ancestors, and also the king of the present is on site, and he's in his very senior age, and that's because he was blessed and he was protected by the God, by his ancestors. The fifth paragraph, the grand ceremony is ongoing. 祭以清酒，从以新母，享于祖考. First things first, the clear wine was offered, and then the red bulls followed, and finally everybody with the red bulls entered into the ancestors' temple, the family temple. So the sequences were clear. First thing first, they are outside of the temple, so they made a ceremony to pour the wine, the clear wine, into a vessel, which represents, or which is a symbolic action that their ancestors had drink those wines poured into the vessel, and very likely the people around would also have their toast afterwards. So this is quite like today's behavior, the Chinese behavior, when in the Qingming festival, the Chinese went to the tomb of their ancestors and pour 3 cups into the soil, into the earth, which means their ancestors take those wines. So that's basically the action and meaning of offering the wines. And then they lead the red bulls into the family's temple for further ceremony, for other actions. Okay, the next sentence. 执其鸾刀，以起其毛，取其血疗. So now everybody with the red bulls are in the family's temple, and one of the officers, normally the zai or maybe da zai, so you know the butcher is quite a key role in the central government in the Zhou dynasty. He would take a knife. 鸾刀 means there's a lot of rings on the knives, like the picture. So he used that knife to cut and open the skins of the red bull. 起 to open, 毛 the fur, the skins. So that means they will, first thing first, they will take off the skins of that red bull. 取其血疗, and then they take the blood and the fat from that bull. So the blood is a very symbolic meaning, which means there is a sacrifice. This is a message, clear message to their ancestors. The red blood is the sacrifice we made for you. And the liao is the fat. So we will see how this fat would be used in the later paragraph. The 5th paragraph is a very detailed description of the ground ceremony. At the very beginning, outside of the ancestors' temple, they made their offering with the clear wine. So everybody, including the kids who pretend to be the ancestors, they had the wines, and which is the opening of the ground ceremony. And then everybody went into the family's temple together with red bulls. And of course, the kids who pretend to be the ancestor will take the main seat in the center of the family's temples. And an officer in the central government, a very key officer, will use a knife to kill that red bull and take off the skin and fur first, and then take the blood and the fat for further usage. The red blood is sort of the signal to the heaven, to their ancestors, that the real ceremony is about to start. The last paragraph. 是烴是享，必必纷纷，四世孔明. We boil those and we offer those, and the food was given frequently, one by one, and this ground ceremony to our ancestors is so great, perfect, and wonderful. Let's discuss the sentence one by one. 是烴是享, which actually is 烴是享是. So 蒸 means boil or burn something. The purpose to boil it or burn it is to make the flavor, the steam, go up. So the way the ancestors taking the food is by smell the flavor to smell it. So they should boil the food, the meat, the carne, the fat. Of course, we mentioned fat, right? We boil it, burn it, let the smell go up, and the god and the ancestors up in the heavens, they can smell it, and that means a successful ceremony, a good offering. 避避纷纷 is a description of the smiling. The steam is going up. 避 means to give. 分 means one by one, a lot of them, one by one. So this is a very vivid description of the steaming that go up and finally was take by the heaven as ancestors. And the last sentence, 是烝, 是烝 means the ceremony for the ancestors, is so great, so wonderful, so perfect. 孔 means very big, 明 bright and good. So 孔明 means the most good, the most great, the greatest. In reality, the offering, including all kinds of foods, the veggies, the sauces, the wine, the wild grass, the carne, the meat, and fishes, and because it's a poet, so it's just pick some of the very symbolic food to describe it. Well, probably that's the first impression of a people, of the poet on sight, because you cannot smell the veggies offered, you cannot smell the sauces, the wild grasses, but the carnes, the meat, boiled or burnt, definitely you will smell it very well and very impressive. A barbecue, right? Okay, we have reached the summit of this grand ceremony, and the poet draw his conclusion as well. 先祖是烝，报以戒福，万寿无疆. So our ancestors is so bright, so great, and we pray to him to ask our fortune, to ask the blessing from him, and we wish our king and Zhou dynasty long life without boundaries. 万寿无疆 is a very frequent sentence in the Book of Songs. Long life without boundaries. So the last paragraph ended at the climax of the grand ceremony, and let this climax stay in the reader's mind and lasting. So this is a very, very nice writings. Okay, let's review the whole poem again. So this poem is about the most grand ceremony in a year, the autumn ceremony. We can see that in many places, the harvest, the mallow, the hunting. The hunting in the autumn is also the most grand hunting in a year, and very likely they will attend the following ceremony with the captures and make them as the offering in the ancestors' temples. But the poet didn't talk about that. He just picked some of the very typical scenario and food to make this poem. And the first thing first is the mallow. We can see the mallow appeared in many poems in the Book of Songs, and very likely is a very critical fruit for the Zhou people as well as in the ceremony. And one of the characters for the mallow is it's sweet, and from the classic literatures, we can see that the ancient Chinese, even today, were very keen to the flavor of sweet in the Chinese term, gan. And gan is not very purely sweet. It's a combination of sweet and umami, or maybe 80% of sweet plus 10-20% of umami. So, but it's a very critical thing, or very important for Chinese. Whenever you see a piece of article describing some of thing of the flavor, it's most likely it says 味甘, the flavor is sweet and umami, or 味苦, the flavor is bitterness. So it's the opposite of the 味甘, 味苦. So that's very, very important concept for Asian Chinese whenever try the flavors. And the second offering described is wine. So the importance of wine is still relevant in today's Chinese society. And the third is the main course, the Red Bull. So that's very obvious, and this is the most important offering to their ancestors. From all the poem, we can feel the abundance and the joyful that the Zhou people enjoy. And in the first paragraph, it's sort of the bird well. The poet is standing on the high mountains, South Mountains, and look down to the fertile land below. And then the poet record the past months, the past years, that they are blessed by the heaven, by their ancestors, with very good, mild snow and rains, which finally bring them the harvest this year. And with the harvest this year, they cook all the food, brew all the wines to hold this grand ceremony. And with this ceremony, in the last paragraph, he said, "Let's pray to our ancestors and asking for the blessing from them, and let them bless us long life without boundaries." So that's the fundamental philosophy of the Zhou people, and that's for today. Bye-bye.